Hello everybody and welcome back to another online Chinese history class with me, Tony. Last class we reviewed Qi, changing the ways of the first three kings, talked about Jie, the last king of Xia, being a bad king and how the Shang tribe overthrew him with their plans. And speaking of Shang tribe, I'm going to ask you a question related to last class. I talked about it in the last class too. When did the Shang tribe defeat the Xia dynasty and establish the Shang dynasty? A. Around 1700 BCE, B. About 1600 BCE, C. About 1500 BCE, or D. About 1450 BCE, or E. Around 50 CE. I'll give you 10 seconds to think and answer. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay, so the correct answer was B. The Shang tribe defeated the Xia dynasty and established the Shang dynasty around 1600 BCE. Their leader, Tang, became the king. Now, Tang was a very good ruler when managing his tribe, and he shows that through his rule and leader as the king of the Shang dynasty. The Shang dynasty was a lot bigger than the Xia dynasty was, because the Shang tribe's land and a lot of other tribes' land were all a part of this Shang dynasty's land. Tang did a lot of incredible things during his rule too. Once there was a drought and a blight. People were hungry and had no food. So Tang ordered some people to tie himself up near a shrine. Apparently, he was trying to pray to heaven and God for it to rain. If it didn't, he would sacrifice himself to heaven and God for it to rain. And it was within this hour that the sky started turning cloudy and dark, and water started pouring down from the skies. The farms and seeds of crops were soaked, and the blight and drought were no longer problems at all. The people were happy and amazed. They thought that he had ties with the divine and started respecting him more. However, some people questioned this and were a bit confused as to why the timing was so perfect. Well, from a bit of evidence now, we can presume that Tang did know a lot about weather and how to predict the weather too. Anyways, it makes sense now, but it impacted the past a lot. The people were more impressed of Tang. Would you have been more impressed if you were alive back then? Well, moving on. Tang thought that it wasn't easy taking over Xia, and it wasn't. They lost a lot of troops in the process, even though they got the upper hand and the surprise. But Tang wanted to make the Shang dynasty last. He studied the ways that the Xia dynasty failed and why they failed. One of the ways that it failed was the rule of passing down the throne. The king would pass down the throne to one of his sons, but the others would get mad, and there would be betrayal most of the time, and utter chaos. And sometimes the king wouldn't pass down at all. There was no really definite rule. There were some general rules, but it wasn't really enforced. And now, what did Tang do here? Tang altered the rules of passing down the Xia dynasty by passing down the throne to his oldest son, but then when his oldest son retired from being the king, it will be the next brother in line who would become the king. Well, if you think that, I'm going to tell you if you're wrong or not after a couple minutes. Or B. Tang copied the style of Yao Shun and Ru, the first three kings, and chose his next successor, who will then choose his next successor again. C. Tang decided to pass the throne down to the prime minister, and the prime minister, who would become the king, will choose another minister based on their performance to be the next prime minister. It's a lot, but yeah. Basically, Tang passes the throne down to a prime minister, and that king, that future king, who is also the prime minister, will choose another prime minister to become the prime minister once they become the king, and that minister who will then become the prime minister when the first prime minister becomes the king, would be the future king. I think I'm confusing you more here, but I think you understand now. So I'll give you 10 seconds to answer. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. The correct answer was A. Tang altered the rules of passing down of the Xia dynasty by passing down the throne to his oldest son, but when his oldest son retired from being the king, it would be the next brother in line who would become the next king. Well, obviously, Tang didn't do option B, or the more bizarre option C. Though some argue that Tang was so great a king that he would be worthy of being the fourth king. That was chosen by if Tang was alive back then. So B was, in fact, an option, but we didn't know if he thought of it or not, because he might have never heard of these times and these stories back then. This is pretty, it's pretty far away from before, and the kings of Xia, they probably didn't tell the tribes about these stories because they wanted to retain their honor and stuff, because they didn't want them to think that they were bad. Oh well, technically they kind of were. Qi just stopped that utterly, and I don't think anybody after a few generations after Qi really learned of this. They just thought that, oh, I'm the king now. Well, that's basically it. Well, okay. So, moving on, the Shang Dynasty, strangely enough, moved its capital around a lot. The people worked hard on building the walls, defense systems, the palace, and a bunch of other things. They worked for years on these things. In theory, they should have stayed there for a pretty long time, especially because of how long the construction took to finish and how long it took to perfect them. But after a small amount of Shang Dynasty kings and generations, one king ended up didn't liking the capital very much. So they just moved, just like that, just because, or maybe not, but the king didn't like the capital. Or maybe it was the looks of it, maybe it was the palace was not a specific color, or maybe because the weather there wasn't that nice, but he just decided to move. And after that, though, that's okay. I mean, a lot of dynasties, they also move around its capital. But this was a bit early, and this kept happening. After a few more kings, the Shang Dynasty decided to move its capital again. And again, and again, and again, and again. Well, you get the point, don't you? They moved around, they had a lot of capitals. A dynasty of this nature was not commonly seen. So people thought that the Shang Dynasty must have moved for some other reason than just not liking the capital. Some people think that they moved because of natural disasters. Some people think that they moved because their production values became lower and lower from the farms, and the animals started, they hunted the animals too much, and the animals started all dying and being extinct in that region. Though that's not very plausible, that's not very possible. But maybe the animals just ran away from there because they didn't want to die. And some people think that they moved to prevent chaos in the family and prevent betrayal. There are many more speculations, and it's all pretty interesting of why they moved and why the Shang Dynasty was like this. But that'll be it for today. See you soon. See you next time.